was published in 1997. And many people got mad, of course, above all the ones related with this guy. This guy, let me tell you one anecdote about this. This is 1997, when it was published, 1995, 1996, when it was written. But just 4 years ago, the Congress of El Salvador tried to get a law in order to have this guy as the founding father of the country, right? The American government was the Bush administration. Can you imagine? The Bush administration had to send the last Democratic ambassador in El Salvador in 1980 just to say, no way. No way, you know, it's no way, because we have all the proof that this guy killed the bishop. There is no, this is a kind of aberration. Right. Okay. So anyway, it's still on the table, right?
Right.
But the book was published by a very small publishing house in El Salvador. But 2 weeks after, they just couldn't stand it, and they called my mother's house. And I was not there. I was in Guatemala doing another kind of business. And they called my mother and said to her, tell him that he better not come back. Wow. That was like 11 o'clock at night. My mother, she's friend of people from the right. She's not involved in politics, but she belongs to this kind of circle. But she was very afraid, and then 20 minutes later, she got the second phone call. And then she called me to Guatemala, and she was very, very affected, right? And I got the phone call. I was at a friend's house, and she said to me, they call here and they say that they're going to kill you if you come back. I said, well, I won't come back. It's like that. and then, of course, I didn't come back for a couple of years. And then I went back again. But that's another story. But the book was never prohibited. The book, every year there is a new edition of the book in El Salvador. It's like that, right? There was not a kind of literary critic.
Right.
Okay, they don't care about the book. They care about me in the sense that the book was the last drop of all the journalism that I was doing. Okay, there was an accumulation. It was not only the book.
Right.
It was like saying, okay, this guy has been here all these years, doing all this research and all our corruption or our killing, and now publish this book. It's too much, right?
It's true.
Too much. We don't want him here.
And on an aesthetic level, like on a political and social level, it all makes a lot of sense. You can't attack. You excoriated your country the same way that Bernhard did, but your country is much more dangerous than Austria when he was writing. But on an aesthetic level, Bernhard comes through loud and clear there, and sort of has influenced some of your later works too. Like Senselessness, I would say, is still operating under his shadow in a way. But how did you first come across Thomas Bernhard, and what's your read on him these days?
Wow. My relationship with Thomas Bernhard book was very intense at the beginning. I had this friend, he was a Guatemalan journalist. He was in charge of the cultural section of the financial newspaper of Mexico. And he asked me if I had read Bernhard, and I said, no, I haven't read Bernhard. And that was middle of the 80s. And we went together to a bookstore. By that time, books didn't have all these chips, so you could rob all the books and still. He was a kind of expert, right? Because I'm very coward for that. I cannot do that.
You don't tell publishers these things.
But this guy was an expert. And we went to Gandhi. I remember we went to this bookstore in Mexico City, in Miguel Ángel de Quevedo, Gandhi bookstore, and he just took 3 books of Bernhardt in his jacket, right? And then we went out, and he said, okay, here are the books, you have to read them. Okay, I'm going to read them, right? So, because I was sweating outside, right? And for him was normal, and so I got the books and I started to read. Were these autobiographical books, the short ones, 5 of them, and he got 3 of them. And I read, and I said, "Wow, this guy is amazing!" And so I got more books, and I started to read the books. But then I stopped reading it because you stop reading an author after you finish all the books that are translated, right? And I didn't write the novel by that time. I wrote the novel like 2 years later, right? And when I wrote the novel, I was in Mexico City completely defeated after I had to close a newspaper. I was the editor-in-chief of this weekly newspaper. I was completely defeated by the Salvadorian political parties and the business people that didn't give us any kind of advertising, and they were, and the army was like threatening the guys that were selling the newspaper in the street. So we had a very bad time, and I owe a lot of money because the newspaper is very expensive stuff. And so I went back to Mexico, and I was in the sense of, when you are defeated, when you are just hating the whole world, the planet, the humanity, whatever, right? Because nothing works, right? And so, and at the top of that was the last day of the year. And so I had to go to celebrate New Year's Eve. And I was finishing the relationship with the mother of my children. And I had to go with them, with her family, right? And I said, oh, I don't want to go, right? I was like, oh, this. And so it was 6 o'clock. And I didn't know what to do. I was like, like poison, right? Completely poison. And that's how I started to write that. And I started to write that just like a joke, like just to get distracted. I didn't have any plan to write a novel. I just didn't want to think of the fact of the money that I owe, of the failure of the newspaper, of going to the dinner to my then wife, family, and so, and I said to myself, I will try to imitate Thomas Bernhardt. And that was the way. And I started to imitate Thomas Bernhardt, just with all this horrible thing that I had in my head about El Salvador. And then I started to feel nice. And I started to feel very comfortable. And then I worked like 3 hours, and I wrote like 20 pages. And I felt so good that I went to the dinner very happy, And then I wrote the novel like that. And it was like, it's here, right? It's here. But I didn't know it was a novel. I didn't know even if I was going to publish that. For me, it was a kind, as I said at the beginning, when the interview was an exercise of style.
Yeah.
Okay, it's an exercise of style. A persiflage. That's what Thomas Bernhardt, translator in Spanish, said to me, because I said the first person that read the book was Thomas Bernhardt, translator into Spanish. He's one of the most important Spanish translators for German, and he read it, right? And I got his address, and I sent it to him, and then we became friends when I went to Spain. This guy said to me, "Oh, this is like a persiflage, right? It's like it's not just an exercise of style. In this imitation, you have something of you, right?" And so it's like, but what's that?
Yeah.
Was not a plan of saying I'm going to imitate the style of Thomas Bernhardt and I will do a novel. But no, I started just to get rid of the situation I was in.